Jason Kingsland has been a friend and an inspiration to me for years. His dedication to his career as an engineer, mixer, and producer is unparalleled. And one of the things I like the most about him is how he thinks about the kind of work that we do. This is from a Zoom conversation we had a while back. I hope you enjoy it.
This hat, I've worn this hat every day for 12 years. It's been my session hat. I don't know when it turned into that, but like I will have pictures with bands with me wearing this fucking hat for a decade.
You know, when we started today, I saw the hat and it's so funny to say, it's like, God, that looks just like that hat he was wearing a long time ago. It's like, where does he find these hats, man? It's like, it's literally the same hat.
It's the same.
How many years did you work in the studio in the music business before you had any success?
I would say that I probably got my first real success probably 4 years in. And I would consider success being the point of moving from the assistant engineer position, being like the patching guy, go get this mic, plug in this thing, to the guy that could actually run the session and competently record the musicians. And that probably took me 4 years.
How many sessions and mixes do you think you've done in your career?
Jesus Christ. Well, like on the session front, I mean, like, you know, for any of us, if you're working on the wide, I found that people that do this, you're at least 300 days a year, bare minimum. And so I would quantify that saying that like I've probably been full-time only doing this exclusively since I was 22, so it's 13 years. So sessions, what would that be?
Oh, don't ask me to do any math.
Shit. Probably 4,000 sessions.
Yeah.
You know?
Thousands.
And then, you know, mixes, probably half that on mixes.
How many hours a day do you typically work?
That is actually something that I've been actually working to change. So like my normal number is 12 hours a day. It's been my normal number forever. And I found that for me, sometimes actually having a little bit of a more, especially in mixing situations, having a more hard fixed number of my hours of maybe something more like 8 or 10 really helps increase my productivity a little bit because I'm really trying to focus on the task and get it done.
What would you say was one of your biggest failures that led to some success or led to you growing and learning more about your career?
I don't know if I can give you like a genesis point for that, right? Like I think that for anyone, like if you were to look at your career, if you could find one pinpoint moment where like it maybe led to some other stuff, what I've kind of found is that my failures that led me to places were taking jobs that I was maybe a little underqualified for. Like the first real chief engineering session I did was for a major label artist, like a 7-piece band. And like, I was not qualified to take that job really on paper, but I had to sink or swim. And so like, was it a failure in that like, there is probably some stuff that wasn't as optimal as it could? Absolutely. But was it a success because like I did the job and I learned a lot and I was trying to further my understanding of how to work as a studio engineer or record producer? Yes, 100% success. And it gave me the confidence to be able to take on more complex sessions than just like, you know, I'm recording the demos for Blues Hammer next week and it's amazing, you know?
Why have you been successful?
One, there's a component of showing up very consistently, showing up and doing the work and being unafraid to keep on working. I've allowed myself to work 7 days a week early in my career, 7 days a week, 16 hours a day, no problem. And that's just what my life was. I'd say that the secondary side of that is trying to maintain a good relationship with my clients, because where my success has really been is word of mouth and people individually speaking up on my behalf and saying like, that guy's great. We need to get this guy on our session.
Showing up is, of course, very important. But I think always being, whether you're an engineer or a producer, you have to be ahead of everybody. You always need to be one step ahead of everyone at all times.
Well, and I think those two things go hand in hand, right? Because like you got to walk in the studio wildly unprepared and just get your dick blown asunder one day to be able to say, oh, right, I've got to be set up, prepared, and I've got to have the mental facility to be able to understand what I'm doing enough to calculate for what someone's going to do 2 hours from now.
I think we all have goals and things we want to accomplish, and we start in this thing. And then as you get into it, you accomplish this, you accomplish that. Are there any things that you've yet to accomplish or that you're still trying to master that you haven't quite done yet?
Absolutely. I feel like that anyone that has the answer no, get the fuck out of this business. Are you fucking kidding me? We're dealing with a very complex scientific and emotional task, summing the two of them together at one junction. Absolutely, you are learning something new every fucking day. If it's 101 technical shit, I was on the phone this morning with another great engineer, Tom Tapley, talking about the 101 on the business side of like, how can I make budgets work down to shit. I mean, have you tried mic and drums like this? I hope my answer for that is always, fuck no, I haven't. I need to try that because I need to learn something new because it'd be a fucking boring job without those kind of variables, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I got into this making records because of Dark Side of the Moon. And so obviously I've not quite achieved some of that stuff. You know, I've always wanted to make something that was really great artistically, but also culturally relevant and commercially successful. All three of those together. If I could just get all those pieces together, still trying, you know.
For any of that, that's so dependent on so many sides of the industry to all be working in synergy together to get those things to happen. Like with Pink Floyd, you had to have a litany of artistic people, technical people, and sales and marketing oriented people all pushing on the same cylinder for that to work. And that's not always dependent on you. So things that I would love to do are milestones that I don't want stuff to be linked against, did my record sell 1 million copies? It's great when that happens. I've had those happen, but it's much more interesting when it's like, did I get to work with an icon? Like, did I get to work with someone who's a master of what they do? And did I learn a lot from that person? Like, I'll learn more sometimes from a bass player or from the percussionist of a band than I will from talking to another record producer or another audio engineer, just because their perspective is so different than mine. And that's far more interesting to me than hearing the same shit I know reiterated back.
You know, in the music business, people don't like to talk about failures. But interestingly enough, in the tech business, it's almost something people wear like a medal.
I've got this great story. I was working in a studio. I was working with an artist who was a part of a pretty big band. He wanted to make a solo record. And so we go to the studio and we had recorded some stuff previously, and it was obvious that decision-making was a really difficult part of the record-making process. And so we kind of made this handshake deal of like, let's do this on a tape machine. And so for people in the audience that don't know, what that means is like, yeah, there's like warmth and vibe, but you've got a limited number of tracks. And so if you start to exceed that number of tracks, you've got to start saying either I'm going to erase this thing or I'm going to put it with something else. So like my bass track and my tambourine track are now combined together.
Yeah.
And that tambourine's on there for fucking ever.
Yeah.
And that's kind of great sometimes because when you're digging through 30 revisions of Pro Tools files to get the vocal take from this day and the drum take from this day and this, as a musician or as a record producer, it's hard to sometimes know, not necessarily like, did I correctly assemble the files, but is this any fucking good? Because like I'm looking at so many variables, I'm not making firm decisions on where I'm at right now. And so in this day, we cut just great rhythm section, big fucking band, guitars, drums, whole nine, and it was amazing. And like it sounds cool and everyone's stoked on it. And this performer was particularly a great vocalist. I mean, he could do genuine like 9-part harmony, not like doubling the third, but like 9 distinct notes moving, having counter melody within that 9-part harmony. And we go do this shit and we're on this really janky, you probably remember these, Billy, that is a 3M tape machine, like 1970s tape. It would get stuck in modes, right? So like you'd be in record, and if you didn't cycle through and go record, input, sync, repro, sync, you were still in fucking record.
Oh, did you have to switch the repro head? Well, like usually when you're punching in, you'd keep it in repro, because I had an old 3340S that to punch in, there's actually the simulsync button.
Very similar, but with this thing, it had some latching issue where like the record would just stay engaged. So you could look at it and it might say input, but it's in record until you cycled through all of the modes. So you had to really be mentally on top of it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So we do a whole 9-part, like this crazy 9-part fucking harmony, right? And we get done, we're like, shit, this sounds fucking great. And for whatever stupid reason, I get the second engineer. I go, hey, put a reel on the half-inch machine. Like, let's print a rough mix. This is just fucking cool. Let's embrace this process. Like, we'll print a rough and go out to lunch. Come back from lunch and be like, yeah, you know, there's some like old fuck ups in the guitars, but we're sticking with this working old school thing. And so, mind you, all the vocals are on one track, and this track can stay and record without showing it. And I start punching out the, like, you know, little fuck ups in the guitar before the guitar solo starts. You see where this goes.
I think I know where it's going.
I erased the fuck out of that background vocal. I mean, I dusted that thing just to nothing. I mean, I'm erasing whole sections. And so I'm going like, fuck. And the client hadn't noticed yet. I'm going, shit. And the assistant engineer did notice. And I'm totally freaked. I go, well, we've kind of got him on the mix. We've kind of got it sitting there on the mix reel. It's just in the mix. We've got to figure out, can we do it? So we go to the two machines and we kind of old school. We go to the first kick drum of the song. Here it is on the mix. Here it is on the multi-track recorder. And we kind of, okay, there it is. And just, you know, old school sync. 1, 2, 3, go.
Man.
And what happened is it prints the whole mix. I'd filtered out the mix a little bit, so it's not real bassy, it's not real trebly, but it's got a lot of mids and it's popping those background vocals up. But it makes this crazy flanger over the whole fucking mix. I mean, just like crazy tape flanger, because there's these two machines, they're not synced up, shit's going in and out. It's cool as fuck. I mean, it's really fun. And like the client the whole day been struggling with the song, and he's going like, fucking A, that's hip. Now, where this relates to failures, I fucked up. I fucked up massively. Unforgivable fuck ups. You'd be fired for this shit. And if you capitalize on a fuck up, it's not a fuck up. So for me, a lot of times it's knowing how to learn from your fuck ups. And in the moment, analyzing, is this a fuck up? Did I genuinely fuck it? Or is there something to learn here? Now, if you're being irresponsible, maybe that's a fuck up.
Yeah.
But in this case, I failed. I failed to do what I was trying to do. But I actually ended at this new, different destination that was a creative solution for a technical problem. And I think that that's a really important aspect as a producer and as an engineer, as a musician, to have musical problem or musical solutions for technical problems when you have failures that will get you to a new, more interesting space than you ever intended to get to in the first place. If that makes sense.
No, that's great. And that's another way of looking at this subject that I hadn't really thought of, that there's been times in my past where I failed or I screwed up, and in the process of digging my way out of it and saving my ass and saving the client or saving my career, I figured out some stuff. I always tell people the reason I know these things is because of all the mistakes I made. Everything I tell people, I want you to remember, everything I'm telling you, I either did the opposite of, or I only know because of some really stupid thing that I did. I always got people want to network. I want to get together with you and network, or like, you know, we should go network. And it's something that, I guess I suck at, but it's also kind of think about it in this weird way, you know, like, so do you like what, it's kind of an open-ended question. So you can say whatever you want about this, but it's kind of like, what is networking to you and how do you network?
You know, networking for me it's a double-edged sword. And I think that, you know, this is not going to be a surpriser. I always find networking a lot of times to be the tool of the non-working, right? Like if you're working, I don't have fucking time to go network. And like, I'll try to go hit an AES event or whatever, but it's like, that's not networking. That's, you know, I'm meeting you're not my client. We're friends. I think you're a great dude and you do great work and we can commiserate about that. That's not fucking networking. That's something else. And I found that a lot of times with networking, my network comes in based around the nature of people who come in to the periphery of your work, right? Like if you're working on a project and there's a manager, well, a lot of producers and engineers hate the opinion of managers. I tend to try to not start at that vantage because you know what that person has? More fucking work.
Yeah.
If you hire a bass player on a session, that guy can also be your client. If you have a good rapport and things are working out great, that's networking. That's real fucking work. And so a lot of times I'm not going out and trying to hit a mixer or like, you know, drink some beers with, you know, the Audio Engineering Society. I'm much more inclined to go hang out, meet a band, talk to their friends, or really get to know the periphery people in my session. Someone calls over their buddy just to hang in the back. I want to know who that dude is. Like, why are you here? And like, what do we have in common so we can do some stuff together? That to me is intelligent networking, if that makes sense. There was a long time where like I would work in Los Angeles. There'd be some guy in there with a soldering iron who's fixing the gear, whatever. I would always buy that fucking dude a cup of coffee. Day one, here's a bagel, here's a cup of coffee. Thanks, man. But you know what? When my ass was in trouble, like a weekend because something's fucked up, I've got someone who's very happy to come down the hall and be like, well, what's going on? You know?
Yeah.
Making people that can help you is every bit as important as making people that can give you money, if not more important sometimes, because sometimes that help can't be timed in a way that money can fix.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Everything I ever planned failed. It's never nothing that planned. So anyway, I was just wondering if you could speak about your idea of luck and maybe how it has helped you.
For me, I have found my luck stuff. It has been stuff where everything is unbelievably fucked and failure is imminent. What I did find that I've always measured as luck is that it's not luck. It's that I've gone out and done things with other people and not always been worried about what the immediate return is for me. I don't have to see like an immediate, like, well, is there money? Is there, prestige? I could just like someone and do some shit with them because it's going to be a fucking blast. And, like I'm kind of a band guy sometimes where it's like, oh, we can just go jam. Like, fuck yeah, let's go do it. And by jam, I mean like record a song or do something that's not quantifiably this task for this amount of money or this, limelight. I found that those situations lead to phone calls I would never, ever fucking get any other way. And my first really big freelancing gig was based on, I had just helped a friend out with some sessions and we recorded some stuff together, and he happened to know someone who was in a really big band that really needed someone that could come in and like work on their stuff with them. And so my first big gig literally came at a point where I was certain I was never going to work again and everything's fucked. And then in 30 minutes, my whole life was different. And I feel like that's a really common theme for people in the music industry is everything's fucked. 3 phone calls later, I'm living in a totally different world. And the luck is putting enough raffle tickets in, and your luck happens. Maybe they get drawn at the right time for you. And the more you work, the more raffles you're in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a numbers game.
Taking some of those dumb risks and not necessarily knowing that you're going to get any benefit from it. But the rewards on those kind of things I have found to be the greatest out of any. Like that moment that I described of getting a random phone call one afternoon and working for this really big band ultimately turned into 7 years of like 200 days a year of work.
Yeah, and this is a story I'm going to have to tell someday, and I won't get into it, but actually with me, it was an air conditioner repairman. That's all I'm going to say. When you choose this kind of career, whether it's as a engineer, mixer, producer, or artist, how do you prepare your life for that? Like, what are the things that you should do or not do in preparing for having a career?
You do have to be prepared to make trades with something. If you love going to fucking baseball games, you may not be doing that shit for a fucking while. Not the way you want to do it. So maybe for someone, they're giving up their season tickets. Maybe some people are giving up, Sunday dinner at grandma's house. But sacrifice is something that if you're unwilling to sacrifice, you will not succeed in this industry. And I think that would be the large arch there. For me personally, I wish that someone occasionally had checked in actually earlier on with me, because I feel like that there's a lot of us that go through the period of obsessively working and then proceeding to maybe over time learn, hey, there's a little bit more to life than like hit and record, or like, hey man, can you come with a little better lick coming out of the bridge going into that second chorus, or third chorus. And for me, I do think that it's going to come down to you got to be prepared to sacrifice, and you also have to be prepared to know where your boundary is with that. What is an unacceptable amount to give up? And those two things together will go a long way.
The reason I asked that question was actually inspired by an artist that I'm working with. He's looking for musicians, and he'd found a bassist and a guitarist, and he was really excited. And he said, yeah, they've got their rents down. They had like moved into cheaper places, so it was more affordable. And it got me thinking like, oh, that's smart thinking.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, like what you're talking about in a lot of ways, what's the lowest resistance between me and this art? Where is it? Is it money? Is it social life? Is it time? Whatever that is, you got to fucking knock that resistance down to next to nothing, you know? Because at that point, then it's like, am I the resistance to my art? Well, great. Then I got to start whittling on me too, you know? And I think that that's really a sign ultimately of like great artists that are able to say like, when you listen to my art that I'm making you, there's very little in between me and you.
What advice do you have for young engineers, producers, and mixers that are coming up in the business?
Here's my number one recommendation. Do not try to off the rip attach yourself to a certain style of music. You're not a rap engineer. You're not a classical engineer. You're not a rock engineer. For me, and especially the longer I go with this, I want to be an avid lover of music. And that if I hear a great rap song, if I hear a great country song, or if I hear a great rock song, it's all the same fucking thing to me. I want to be involved with great. And that will do more for me than any other thing. Like I've made some like really avant-garde, weird free jazz records. And no fucking money. I mean, like, obviously no one's like trying to like listen to, you know, some brilliant musician like wank off with like a ring mod. I learned more from doing free jazz records for like $100 in an afternoon where I'm recording live to 2-track than I did from 20 weeks of doing the same kind of records I had been doing. So like if you're in this for the passion of learning and loving music, you've got to put yourself in different environments with different contexts that challenge you in new ways to be able to become, even if you want to live in one planet, if you want to be doing mostly rap, you got to be able to go do other things, because when you go back to reapproach rap or whatever your home planet is, you're going to think of it totally fucking differently and have so many new cool ideas. And your clients are going to think that you're actually like fucking innovative because you're ahead of what everyone else is doing. You're bringing new things to the table, not just like, well, it's the chorus, so I guess we'll use the 8th note delay now, right? Oh, that last word, a half note delay. Oh, you know, like that's fuck you. That's not innovation. Learn something new and get outside of your comfort zone to do so.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I'd been doing a lot of rap music for years and then went into bluegrass. And I found that a lot, like I spent so much time focusing on low frequencies in rap music. Can't tell you how much that helped me in bluegrass, dealing with a stand-up bass, which is one of the hardest things to record and mix properly. Because I think a lot of people just turn the bass down because it's such a pain in the ass. But I want that bass up there punching on every note. Yeah. So I've come up with some kind of wacky techniques to get it. But I learned all that from working on rap music and just having to, you know, focus way down on just the low end. And it's this weird thing that I didn't realize that skill was going to translate over to bluegrass.
Have you gone back and done rap since you've done bluegrass?
Oh, yeah. I don't do so much of it anymore.
Do you think about it differently?
Rap music?
Yeah. Now that you've done, like, say you've kind of left your home base of rap and now you're kind of flirting around with doing more rap sessions again. Do you think about rap in a different way because of working on bluegrass records? I'm
going to kind of combine bluegrass into country music because I've been doing a lot of country music too over the last few years. But the thing that for me that I found interesting is that I actually see them as being kind of the same art form. Right. They're folk music. They're talking about their lives, where they live, and also you'll often see a different in the sound and the style and the approach based on where they live in the country, which you don't see in rock so much. That tends to be more of a universal thing, but definitely with rap and bluegrass and country, it's very kind of tied into their lifestyle and their culture and where they live in the country. And that was the thing that I found. I started to see a lot of similarities between the genres more than differences when I went back into it. And I was like, oh yeah, there's a lot of similarities there.
Well, and I think that that's one of the things that ends up being so interesting about great music. You know, when I was talking about working with people that are great, for me, a lot of times when I'm listening to music, I can listen to Miles Davis, I could listen to Blood on the Tracks, I could listen to Slayer, I could listen to NWA, and it's all the same fucking thing to me. Because it gets back to that, there's no resistance between that person and their art form. And it's just like, I'm just perceiving this person giving me the most of me that they can give right now. They're absolutely doing everything on the fringe of their ability And like that to me is always the most exciting thing to be around. And those are the kind of projects I actually always find like kind of catch fire in funny ways. Like you can think it's the wackest shit on the planet, but when people push themselves like that, you'll see those things will like the stuff I've gotten success out of sometimes will defy what I would expect commercial expectation. Like I just did a 13-piece Afrobeat band, and like crazy fucking songs about like psychedelic experiences and like, you know, interconnected universal love through like symbolisms of like tigers and shit like that. I mean, like really out shit on paper, right? Motherfucker got a record deal, like a pretty good one. And they're going to put the record out on like an imprint of Sony. And it's honestly, I can only assign it to like, everything on paper says this is wrong, except for this person has put so much of themselves into it that like I find that I personally have to always start to change my expectation of like what I think will be successful or not. And it occurred to me even a couple of years ago, you know, like if you were to try to be picking through things like to get involved with for success, that if you're to write down most of those things on paper that are successful, a lot of times they sound really fucking silly until you see the actualization of it. Like if I was to call you and be like, Billy, I got this record I want us to work on. We're going to do this kind of like disco boogie thing. And it's going to be kind of a real vibe kind of track. It's going to have a ripping guitar solo in it. It's going to have a voiceover track about like the undead coming back to life. And, you know, it'll kind of have a real cool pop top line to it. Now, if I was to describe that to you and be like, will you come work on this, maybe take a little hit on your rate, how fast would you be like, fuck no?
Oh, no, actually, I would be there.
Right. But I feel like there's a lot of people in that description be like, I absolutely don't want to do that. But that's also absolutely all of the ingredients of Thriller. You know, like it's a stupid idea until it's not.
When I started working with Little John and the Yin Yang Twins, it's all considered like an establishment now, like this cultural thing. But man, I got to tell you, at the time, people hated it. They made fun of Little John. They were like, why is he putting rave and techno sounds with a rap beat? And why are they doing these chants? Like, what is that? And then the Yin Yang Twins, like, and it's, once again, it was something on paper. Like, most of my big successes were not things that at the time people thought were going to be popular. It was really just people doing what the hell they wanted. When they finally said, fuck it, I'm going to do what I want. I'm tired of doing it the way somebody else said I should do it. But typically when people come in and they got a lot of money and they're doing it by this blueprint thing, like on paper, this should be successful, I never see that stuff succeed. It's always this thing that kind of comes out of left field and that you're not expecting that hits huge. And I think it's usually because they're coming from a different place with it. They're not being like everybody else. And I also think the public sniffs out a fake.
I think that a lot of times, you know, like if you are intrinsically getting in line to say like, you know, say at the time with like Little John, like if you're getting in line to go be, you know, against all of like the kind of NYC hip hop at the time that was just so hot, you just made yourself intrinsically compete. You now have to be in a list of motherfuckers that are natively doing the thing that you're now kind of doing. Now, when you say, fuck all that noise, I'm going to just do this. Now, you're the only person that is the purveyor of your product. So you intrinsically have a monopoly on that. Like, so abso-fucking-lutely, like, do your own thing and just don't fucking worry about it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Remember to subscribe and also be unique.